Sarah couldn't remember the last time she had eaten a full meal. She knelt in the corner of the great hall, her hands folded in her lap, her stomach twisting with a hunger so familiar it had become part of her. Around her, the pack feasted. Roasted meats, fresh bread, wine that flowed like water. The smell of it filled her nose, made her mouth water, made her want to weep. But Omegas ate last. That was the rule. And by the time the pack was done, there was never anything left. Here. A bone landed at her feet, still slick with grease. A few scraps of meat clung to it, barely enough to taste. Don't say I never gave you anything. Laughter erupted from the table. Beta Marcus and his friends, drunk on wine and cruelty. Sarah didn't look up, didn't react. She had learned long ago that reacting only made it worse. She picked up the bone. Her hands were shaking. Look at her, someone sneered. Like a dog begging for scraps. More laughter. Sarah's cheeks burned, but she kept her head down. She was used to this. She had been the Pax Omega for 7 years, ever since her parents had died and left her with nothing. No rank, no protection, no one to speak for her. She was property, less than property. At least property was fed. The Lycan king approaches. The announcement cut through the noise like a thunderclap. Silence fell. The laughter died. Even Beta Marcus went pale, scrambling to his feet and smoothing down his tunic. Sarah pressed herself further into the corner, trying to disappear. She had heard stories about King Theron, the ancient warrior who had conquered half the realm, the monster who could kill with a glance, the king who answered to no one and nothing. She did not want him to notice her. The doors to the great hall swung open, and he walked in. He was massive. That was her first thought. Broad shoulders, towering height, a body built for war. His dark hair fell past his jaw, and his face was all sharp angles and hard lines. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch. Silver, cold, ancient in a way that made the air feel heavy. Alpha Brennan, the pack leader, rushed forward with a bow so deep his forehead nearly touched the floor. King Theron, we weren't expecting you. Had we known... I don't announce my visits. The king's voice was low, calm, dangerous. I prefer to see how my territories truly operate. His gaze swept the hall, over the laden tables, the nervous faces, the half-eaten feast. And then those silver eyes found her. Sarah stopped breathing. He stared at her for a long moment, at her ragged dress, her hollow cheeks, the bone still clutched in her trembling hands. Something flickered in his expression, something she couldn't name. "Who is that?" he asked. Alpha Brennan glanced back at her with barely concealed irritation. "No one, Your Majesty. Just a Pack Omega. She's..." "I asked who she is, not what she is." The correction was quiet, but it landed like a blow. Alpha Brennan flinched. "Sarah," he said quickly. "Her name is Sarah. An orphan. We took her in out of charity." "Charity." The king's voice was flat. "Is that what you call it?" He moved. One moment he was standing by the doors, the next he was crossing the hall with long, purposeful strides. The crowd parted before him like water. Sarah wanted to run, to hide, to make herself smaller than she already was. She couldn't move. The king stopped in front of her. This close, she could see the silver in his eyes wasn't cold at all. It was molten, burning. "Stand up," he said. It wasn't a request. Her body obeyed before her mind could catch up, pulling her to her feet on legs that threatened to give out. He was so tall, She barely reached his chest. She stared at the buttons of his coat, unable to look higher, unable to meet those impossible eyes. "Look at me." She raised her chin, forced herself to meet his gaze. Something shifted in his expression, something that looked almost like recognition, like relief, like a man who had been searching for something his entire life and had finally found it. "When did you last eat?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. "I... what?" "A full meal. When?" She couldn't remember. Days? Weeks? The scraps blurred together into one long ache of hunger and humiliation. "I don't know," she whispered. His jaw tightened. A muscle jumped in his cheek. Without a word, he turned and walked to the head table. Alpha Brennan's seat. The best food, the fullest plate, untouched since the king's arrival. He picked up the plate, picked up the chair, and carried both back to where Sarah stood. The hall was silent. No one moved. No one breathed. King Theron set the chair down in front of her. "Sit." Sarah sat. She didn't know what else to do. He pulled a second chair close, so close his knee nearly touched hers, and sat facing her. The plate balanced on his palm, piled high with roasted meat and vegetables and bread still warm from the oven. "Open your mouth," he said. She stared at him. "What?" He tore off a piece of bread, dipped it in the meat's juices, and held it to her lips. His silver eyes never left hers. "You're shaking too hard to feed yourself, so I'll do it." His voice softened, just slightly. "Open your mouth, Sarah." The sound of her name in his voice broke something inside her. She opened her mouth. He fed her, slowly, carefully, piece by piece, bite by bite, as if she was something precious, something worth tending. The bread was soft, the meat was rich, the vegetables melted on her tongue like nothing she had ever tasted. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She couldn't stop them, couldn't wipe them away, could only sit there and let this terrifying, impossible king feed her like she mattered. "More?" he asked quietly. She nodded. He kept going. Behind them, the hall remained frozen. Alpha Brennan's face had gone white. Beta Marcus looked like he might be sick. Everyone watched as the Lycan king, the most powerful man in the realm, hand-fed a starving Omega in front of them all. When the plate was empty, Theron set it aside. His thumb brushed her cheek, catching a tear. "You will never go hungry again," he said. It wasn't a promise. It was a decree, an unbreakable law. "Do you understand me?" Sarah didn't understand any of this, why he was here, why he cared, why he was looking at her like she was the only person in the room. "Why?" she managed. His expression shifted, that look of recognition again, of certainty. "Because you're mine," he said simply. "And I take care of what's mine." The words should have frightened her, should have reminded her that she was property, that powerful men only wanted one thing from Omegas like her. But his hands were gentle, his voice was soft, and for the first time in 7 years, her stomach was full. She didn't know what any of it meant, but she wanted to find out. He took her that night, not in the way she had feared, not with force or demands or the cold efficiency of a man claiming property. He simply stood, offered his hand, and said, "You're coming with me." Sarah looked at Alpha Brennan, at Beta Marcus, at the pack that had starved her, mocked her, treated her like dirt beneath their feet for 7 long years. None of them moved to stop him. She took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm, steady, impossibly gentle for hands that had killed more men than she could count. He led her out of the great hall, past the frozen faces and the deafening silence, into the cold night air where a carriage waited. "Get in," he said. "We have a long journey." She climbed inside. The carriage was warm, lined with furs and velvet. A basket sat on one of the seats, filled with bread and cheese and dried fruit. More food than she had seen in months. King Theron settled across from her and knocked twice on the roof. The carriage lurched forward. Sira sat rigid, her hands clasped in her lap, waiting. For the demands, for the conditions, for the moment when the mask would slip and she would see the monster beneath. "Eat," he said instead. She blinked. "What?" "The basket." He nodded toward it. "Eat. You need more than one meal to recover from years of starvation." She stared at him, then at the basket, then back at him. "I don't understand," she whispered. "What don't you understand?" "Everything." She didn't understand any of this. Why he had fed her in front of the entire pack, why he was taking her away, why he kept looking at her like she was something precious instead of something broken. "Why me?" The words came out cracked, desperate. "I'm nobody. I'm an Omega. I'm—" "You're my mate!" The words hung in the air between them. Sira's heart stopped. That's not possible. And yet. He leaned back, his silver eyes never leaving her face. "I felt it the moment I walked into that hall. My wolf recognized you before my mind did. You're mine, Sarah. You've been mine since before you were born. I just had to find you." She shook her head. This was madness. True mates were stories, fantasies, things that happened to beautiful, worthy people, not to starving Omegas who ate scraps off the floor. "You're wrong," she said. "You have to be wrong. I can't be. You can." His voice was calm, patient. "You are. But I'm nothing." The word came out small, broken, the word she had heard 1,000 times, from 1,000 different mouths, until it had carved itself into her bones. Something flickered in the king's expression, something fierce and sharp and almost angry. "Who told you that?" he asked quietly. "Everyone." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. The pack, the alphas, the betas, even the other omegas, the ones who ranked higher than me, they all said it. I was worthless, useless, a waste of food and space. Her voice cracked. After a while, I stopped arguing. Theron was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. "They were wrong." "You don't know that. You don't know me." "I know enough." He leaned forward, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "I know that you survived 7 years of cruelty that would have broken anyone else. I know that you knelt in that corner with dignity, even when they threw bones at your feet. I know that you're sitting in this carriage, terrified and confused and half-starved, and you're still asking questions instead of cowering." His jaw tightened. "That's not nothing, Sarah. That's strength." She didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever looked at her and seen anything worth keeping. "Eat," he said again, softer this time. "Please. We'll talk more when you've rested." She reached for the basket. Her hands were still trembling, but less than before. The bread was fresh. The cheese was sharp and rich. The dried fruit was sweet on her tongue. She ate until her stomach ached, and then she ate a little more. Theron watched her the entire time, not with hunger or impatience, just attention, like she was worth watching. When she finally set the basket aside, exhaustion hit her like a wave. Days of hunger, weeks of fear, years of survival, all of it crashing down at once. "Sleep," the king said. "I'll wake you when we arrive." "Where are we going?" "Home." The word was simple, certain. "My palace. Your palace now." Your palace. The words didn't make sense. Nothing made sense. But her eyes were closing, and the furs were warm, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she wasn't afraid of what would happen when she woke up. She slept. When she opened her eyes again, sunlight was streaming through the carriage windows. They had stopped moving. Outside, she could hear voices, movement, the sounds of a world waking up. The king was still there, still watching. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked, her voice thick with exhaustion. "No." "Why not?" His lips curved, just slightly, almost a smile. "I was watching you." It should have been unsettling. A powerful man, sitting in the dark, watching her sleep. But his eyes were soft, warm, like he had spent the night guarding something precious. "We've arrived," he said. "There are servants waiting to help you bathe and dress. You'll have your own rooms, your own space. Anything you need, you only have to ask." "And what do you want in return?" The question came out sharper than she intended. She braced herself for the truth, for the price, for the inevitable moment when she learned that kindness always came with strings. Theron stood and offered his hand again. "I want you to heal," he said. "I want you to eat and rest and remember what it feels like to be safe. I want you to learn that not everyone in this world wants to hurt you." His silver eyes held hers. "And when you're ready, only when you're ready, I want you to choose me. Not because you have to, because you want to." Sarah took his hand. She still didn't believe it. Didn't believe that someone like him could want someone like her. Didn't believe that this wasn't some elaborate trick, some cruel joke that would shatter her the moment she let herself hope. But as he helped her from the carriage and led her toward a palace that glittered in the morning light, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. A tiny, fragile spark of possibility. Maybe she was wrong about her worth. Maybe he was right. The palace was overwhelming. Sarah had never seen anything like it. Soaring ceilings painted with murals of wolves and moons, corridors lined with tapestries older than her entire bloodline, servants who bowed to her, bowed as if she were someone worth acknowledging. Her rooms were larger than the entire quarters she had shared with 6 other Omegas back at the Pack. A bedroom with a canopied bed, piled high with pillows, a sitting room with plush furniture and a fireplace crackling with warmth, a bathing chamber where steam rose from water that smelled like roses and honey. "Is this real?" she whispered. The servant attending her, a kind-faced beta named Mira, smiled gently. "Very real, my lady. The king gave specific instructions. You're to have the finest of everything." My lady. No one had ever called her that. No one had ever called her anything but Omega or girl or nothing at all. She bathed until her skin was pink, dressed in clothes softer than anything she had ever touched. A simple gown of deep blue that fit her perfectly, as if it had been made for her. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The hollow cheeks were still there, the shadows under her eyes. But beneath the exhaustion, she saw something else. Someone who might, possibly, be worth looking at. The days that followed blurred together. Theron gave her space, as he had promised. He didn't push, didn't demand. He simply appeared. At meals, sitting across from her, watching to make sure she ate. In the gardens, walking beside her in comfortable silence. In the library, reading by the fire while she explored shelves that seemed to stretch forever. He was patient in a way she didn't understand. Patient like he had all the time in the world. "How old are you?" she asked one evening, curled in a chair by the fire. He looked up from his book. 412. She stared at him. Years? Years. His lips twitched. "Does that bother you?" It should have. The gap between them was incomprehensible. She was 23. He had been alive for centuries before she was born. "No," she said slowly. "I think it makes me feel safe." "Safe? You've seen everything, done everything. You could have anyone." She pulled her knees to her chest, a habit she couldn't break. "But you're here, with me, reading by the fire like it's the most natural thing in the world." Something softened in his expression. "It is the most natural thing in the world. You're my mate. There's nowhere else I'd rather be." She didn't know how to respond to that, so she didn't. But she thought about it for hours afterward. The nightmares came on the 5th night. She was back at the pack, back in the corner of the great hall. But this time, there was no food at all. Not even scraps. They laughed as she begged, as her stomach cramped, as her body began to wither. Worthless. Burden. Should have let you starve. She woke screaming. The door burst open before she could catch her breath. Theron stood in the frame, chest heaving, eyes wild with something that looked like fear. "Sirrah." He crossed the room in 3 strides. "What happened? Are you hurt?" She couldn't answer, couldn't speak. The nightmare still clung to her, its claws sunk deep, and she was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Theron knelt beside her bed. His hand hovered near her face, not touching, waiting. "Can I hold you?" he asked quietly. She nodded. He climbed onto the bed and pulled her into his arms. She pressed her face against his chest, breathing in the scent of him, pine and smoke and something wild. His hand stroked her hair. Slow, rhythmic, grounding. "I've got you," he murmured. "You're safe. I've got you." The words cracked something open inside her. All the years of hunger and fear and loneliness came flooding out, and she sobbed against him like a child. Ugly, heaving sobs that shook her entire body. He held her through all of it, didn't flinch, didn't pull away, just held her and stroked her hair and whispered that she was safe, that she was okay, that he wasn't going anywhere. When the storm finally passed, she was hollow, wrung out, but somehow lighter. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't." His voice was rough. "Don't ever apologize for this." She pulled back just enough to look at him. His silver eyes were bright, wet, as if her pain had wounded him too. "I thought I was going to die there," she said. The words came out before she could stop them. "At the pack. I thought they would starve me until there was nothing left. And sometimes—" her voice cracked. "Sometimes I thought that might be easier than fighting, than hoping, than waking up every day to the same emptiness." Theron's jaw tightened. His arms pulled her closer. "You thought about giving up?" he said quietly. Yes. She had never admitted it to anyone. had barely admitted it to herself. I thought about just stopping, letting go, disappearing. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then his hand cupped her face, tilting it up so she had to meet his gaze. "I'm glad you didn't," he said. "I'm glad you fought. I'm glad you held on, even when it seemed impossible. Because if you hadn't—" His voice broke, just slightly. "If you hadn't, I would have walked into that hall and found nothing. And I would have spent the rest of my very long life knowing that my mate had been out there, suffering, and I hadn't found her in time." Tears slipped down her cheeks. He wiped them away with his thumb. "You are not worthless, Sarah. You are not a burden. You are the most precious thing I have ever found in 400 years of searching." His forehead pressed against hers. "And I will spend every day proving that to you, for as long as it takes, for as long as you'll let me." She didn't think, didn't plan. She just leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft, tentative, a question more than a statement. But Theron's response was immediate. His hand slid into her hair, holding her gently, and he kissed her back with a tenderness that made her heart ache. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "Sarah," he said roughly. "I know." She pressed her hand to his chest, feeling his heart pound beneath her palm. "I know it's too fast. I know I'm not ready. She swallowed. "I needed you to know that I feel it too, whatever this is." His smile was like sunrise, slow and warm and full of light. "We'll take it slow," he said. "As slow as you need. I've waited 4 centuries. I can wait a little longer." He stayed with her that night, not touching, not pushing, just there. A warm presence in the dark, keeping the nightmares at bay. And as Sarah drifted back to sleep, she realized something that terrified her. She was falling in love with him, and she didn't want to stop. 2 weeks of peace, 2 weeks of healing, 2 weeks of learning what it meant to be cared for. Sarah had gained weight. Not much, but enough that her cheeks no longer looked hollow, that her collarbones no longer jutted like blades beneath her skin. She smiled more. Laughed, sometimes. A sound that still startled her when it escaped. And Theron was everything. He courted her like she was precious, brought her flowers from the garden, read to her by the fire, sat with her through the nightmares that still came, though less often now. He never pushed for more than she could give, never made her feel like she owed him anything. She was happy, truly, impossibly happy, which was why, when the messenger arrived, she should have known it couldn't last. "Alpha Brennan requests an audience," the guard announced, his face carefully neutral. He claims the Omega was taken without proper procedure, that she belongs to his pack by law." Sarah's blood turned to ice. Theron's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Something dangerous. "Send him in," he said. The throne room felt different with Alpha Brennan in it. Smaller. Darker. Sarah stood beside Theron's throne, her hands clasped to hide their trembling, as the man who had starved her for 7 years walked through the doors. He looked the same. Tall. Broad. That same false smile stretching across his face. Behind him came Beta Marcus and 2 other pack members, all of them watching her with barely concealed contempt. "King Theron." Alpha Brennan bowed, but it was shallow, perfunctory. "I've come to discuss a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding." Theron's voice was flat. "The Omega is my mate. She stays with me." With respect, Your Majesty, pack law is clear. Omegas belong to their pack unless formally released, and I never released her. Brennan's smile widened. She's pack property. Has been since her parents died. You can't simply take her. Property. The word hit Sarah like a fist. After 2 weeks of being treated like a person, like someone who mattered, hearing that word again made her want to crawl back into the corner and disappear. She's not property, Theron said. His voice had dropped to something low and lethal. She's my mate. Mate bonds don't supersede pack law. You know this. Brennan spread his hands, all false reasonableness. I'm not trying to cause problems. I simply want what's mine returned. She can be compensated for, if you prefer. I'm sure we can reach an arrangement. Compensated for. Like she was livestock, like she was cargo. There will be no arrangement. Theron rose from his throne, and even Brennan took a step back. She stays. Then you leave me no choice. Brennan's mask slipped, revealing the cruelty beneath. I'll take this to the council. I'll have every pack in the territory questioning your judgment. A king who steals omegas, who ignores pack law for his own pleasure. He laughed, ugly and sharp. They'll tear you apart. Silence. Sarah's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. This was it. The moment when she would discover what she was really worth. Whether Theron would fight for her, or whether he would decide she wasn't worth the trouble. Just like everyone else. Sarah. She flinched at the sound of her name. Theron had turned to face her, his silver eyes searching her face. What do you want? He asked. She stared at him. What? What do you want? He stepped closer, his voice dropping so only she could hear. I will burn the world for you if you ask me to. I will go to war with every pack in the territory. I will tear Brennan apart with my bare hands. His jaw tightened. But I won't make this choice for you. You've spent your whole life being told where to go and who to belong to. So I'm asking, what do you want? She looked at Alpha Brennan, at Beta Marcus, at the men who had thrown bones at her feet and called her a dog. She thought about the corner of the great hall, the scraps, the hunger that had hollowed her out until she was nothing but emptiness and survival. Then she looked at Theron, at the king who had fed her with his own hands, who had held her through nightmares, who had looked at her and seen treasure where everyone else saw trash. Something clicked into place inside her chest. I want to stay, she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. Brennan's face twisted with fury. You don't get to choose, he spat. You're an Omega. You're nothing. She's my mate. Theron's voice cracked through the room like thunder. She's my queen, and she has made her choice. He turned to face Brennan, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. You have no claim here. You have no power here. And if you ever speak to her like that again, I will rip out your tongue and feed it to you. Brennan's face went pale. The council can choke on their laws. Theron stepped forward, and Brennan stumbled back. You starved her, humiliated her, treated her like she was less than dirt. And now you come into my palace and demand I return her to you like she's a lost piece of furniture? His laugh was dark, dangerous. You're lucky I'm letting you leave with your life. This isn't over, Brennan snarled, but his voice shook. Yes, it is. Theron's eyes blazed silver. Leave, now, before I change my mind about letting you breathe. They ran, all of them, Brennan and Marcus and the others, fleeing the throne room like the cowards they were. The doors slammed shut behind them, and then it was just Sarah and Theron, alone in the echoing silence. He turned to her, the fury drained from his expression, replaced by something soft, vulnerable. "Sarah," he breathed. She crossed the distance between them and threw her arms around his neck. The kiss wasn't gentle this time. It was desperate and hungry, and everything she had been holding back for 2 weeks. His arms wrapped around her, lifting her off her feet, and she gasped against his mouth as he pulled her closer. "Mine," he growled against her lips. "Say it." "Yours." The word came out breathless, certain. "I'm yours, Theron. I choose you. I'll always choose you." He kissed her again, deeper this time, and she melted into him. All the fear, all the doubt, all the years of believing she was worthless. It all fell away. There was only him, only this, only the feeling of being wanted, truly wanted, for the first time in her life. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "I love you," she said. The words surprised her. She hadn't planned to say them, but they were true. Truer than anything she had ever said. Theron's expression cracked open. Something raw and bright shone in his eyes. "I love you too," he said roughly. "I've loved you since the moment I saw you in that hall. I'll love you until the end of time." She believed him. For the first time in her life, she believed she was worth loving, and that changed everything. The bonding ceremony was held beneath a full moon. Sarah stood in the palace courtyard, surrounded by hundreds of witnesses, nobles, warriors, servants, all of them gathered to watch their king claim his mate. She wore a gown of silver and white, her hair threaded with moonflowers that glowed softly in the darkness. She had never felt more beautiful. She had never felt more seen. Theron stood before her, his silver eyes reflecting the moonlight. He was dressed in black, his dark hair loose around his shoulders, looking every inch the ancient king he was. But when he looked at her, there was nothing ancient about him, just a man, deeply in love, making a promise. "I, Theron, king of the Lycan territories, take you as my mate," he said, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "My partner, my equal, my queen." He took her hands in his, and his touch was warm, steady. "I vow to protect you, to cherish you, to stand beside you through all the years we are given. I vow to feed you when you are hungry." His lips curved slightly at that. "To hold you when you are afraid. To love you even when you cannot love yourself." Sarah's eyes burned with tears, happy tears, the kind she had never thought she would cry. "I, Sarah," she said, and her voice only wavered a little, "take you as my mate, my partner, my equal, my king." She squeezed his hands. "I vow to trust you, to choose you, to stand beside you through all the years we are given. I vow to let you care for me." The words caught in her throat. "Even when I don't think I deserve it. I vow to love you with everything I have, everything I am." Theron pulled her close and kissed her, and the courtyard erupted in cheers. That night, in their chambers, he was gentle, reverent. He touched her like she was something precious, something sacred. And when he whispered her name against her skin, it sounded like worship. "I spent 400 years alone," he murmured afterward, holding her against his chest. "I thought I would spend 400 more. And then I walked into that hall and saw you, starving in a corner, and everything changed." She traced patterns on his chest, feeling his heart beat beneath her palm. "I was so afraid of you." "I know." "I thought you would be like them, like everyone else. She lifted her head to look at him. I thought kindness always came with a price. It doesn't. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. Not with me. Not ever. She kissed him again, soft and slow, and let herself believe it. The vindication came 3 months later. Word had spread, as word always did. The Omega who had been starved and humiliated was now queen of the Lycan territories. The girl who had eaten scraps off the floor now dined at the king's table. The nothing, the worthless, the burden. She had become the most powerful woman in the realm. Alpha Brennan's pack was the first to suffer. The council, it turned out, did not look kindly on packs that starved their Omegas. When Theron presented evidence of Sarah's treatment, the testimonies, the records, the damning truth of 7 years of cruelty, the council stripped Brennan of his title. His lands were seized. His pack was dissolved. He was left with nothing. Sarah heard the news while sitting in the garden, sunlight warm on her face. "He's been exiled," Theron said, settling beside her on the bench. "He and Marcus both. They have nothing now, no pack, no power, no one willing to take them in." She waited for satisfaction, for triumph, for the vindictive joy of knowing her tormentors had finally gotten what they deserved. Instead, she felt peace. "Good," she said simply. Theron studied her face. "You're not angry?" "I was." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "For a long time I was so angry I could barely breathe. But now—" She smiled, soft and real. "Now I just want to move forward. They can't hurt me anymore. That's enough." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "You're remarkable. You know that?" "You keep telling me." "Because it's true." A year passed, then 2, then 5. Sarah grew into her role as queen. She established programs for Omegas across the territories, shelters, resources, protections that ensured no one would suffer the way she had. She became known as the Queen who remembered, beloved by the lowborn and feared by anyone who dared mistreat those beneath them. And through it all, Theron was beside her. He still fed her sometimes, not because she was too weak to feed herself, but because it had become something between them, something intimate, something sacred. On quiet evenings, when it was just the two of them by the fire, he would offer her bites of fruit or cheese, and she would take them from his fingers, and they would both remember. Where they had started, how far they had come. "Do you ever think about it?" she asked one evening, curled against him in their chambers. "That night in the great hall?" "Every day." His arm tightened around her. "I think about how close I came to never finding you, how easily I could have visited a different territory, a different pack, how you could have—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "But you did find me," she said softly. "You did." "I did." He tilted her chin up, meeting her eyes. "And I would do it all again. Every moment, every choice, 1,000 times over." She kissed him, long and deep, and when she pulled back, she was smiling. "I love you," she said. "I love you more than I ever thought I could love anything." "I love you too." His voice was rough with emotion. "My mate, my queen, my everything." Sarah thought about the girl she had been. The Omega in the corner, hollow and starving, waiting for scraps that never came. The girl who had believed she was worthless, who had thought about giving up, who had never imagined she could be anything more than what others told her she was. That girl was gone now. In her place was a woman, a queen, someone who had been broken and rebuilt, who had been starved and then fed, who had been told she was nothing and had discovered she was everything. She had found her worth, not in Theron's eyes, though he had helped her see it, but in her own heart, in her own soul, in the quiet, unshakable knowledge that she deserved to be loved. And she was, completely, unconditionally, forever. The Omega who had been given leftovers was now a queen, and she had never been hungrier for life. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new tale of fated mates and found love. More Lycan King romances are coming soon.